Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well today. My name is Thomas Brush. I make indie games for a living. Most of you know that though. Sorry I'm a little bit late here. I am really excited though because we're going to jump into Photoshop. Wait, I can hear myself. What's going on? Apparently I was watching myself. Okay, anyway. Let's jump into Photoshop and I'm going to show you guys just a few tricks that any of you can do. So I would say bring your mouse, right? Bring your questions, and if you have Photoshop, open up Photoshop and let's go ahead and well, let's get started. By the way, guys, today's video is brought to you by 2D Art Pro, and this is my program that I've been working on for the last 3 months. I figured I'd let you know about it because there's a lot of you I know who want to learn how to do what I do. I'm going to show you a lot of it today in the live stream, but sorry, one sec here. I'm reading the chat, but there is a link below if you guys want 50% off. I'm not going to do a discount like this in a long time. So if you want 50% off this brand new program where I teach, well, a ton of stuff here. First off, I'm going to teach you Photoshop basics. I'm going to teach you how to do cartoony landscapes, interiors, serious landscapes with texture, multiple player styles, a serious player style, a cartoony player style, and then lots of different kinds of enemy styles as well. A lot of you are probably confused, and we're going to talk about this during our live stream. A lot of you are probably confused about how to actually open up or how to even, I guess, start a document in Photoshop. And so what I'm going to do for this live stream is I'm actually going to open up one of these color templates that are free for a limited time during this sale event. Okay, so I'm going to open up one of them and I'm going to show you kind of how they work and how we can take some color and just with a mouse, just click around and create something beautiful. And here's what's funny is I know most of you are going to be able to end up at the end of this live stream, you're going to say, I didn't know I could do that. So let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop and get started. We're going to be using some of the brushes that are included in the course and the patterns as well. So I can't wait to show you those. But you guys don't need those for your live stream, for this live stream today. So anyway, let's jump into Photoshop and get started. Can everybody hear me okay? I should have asked that a while ago. Good. All right. One of you asked me a great question. While I open up a new document, you said, how long did it take me to make Bioshock 2D? Just those 3 levels took me 2.5 weeks. It took way too long. Okay, we're going to start with 3840 by 2160 canvas. Okay, guys? How many of you have Photoshop open and are actually going to follow along here? Let me know in the chat. Definitely curious. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my voice today. All right. So I'm going to start with the pencil tool. Okay. Actually, wrong. I'm going to start with a color palette. Let's start with the color palette first, and then I'm going to show you towards the end of this live stream those templates that I was talking about, those color templates. So what I like to do is I like to start with the sky color first. And instead of creating swatches in Photoshop swatches panel, I just put them on my canvas, okay? So let's start with a swatch color that is our sky, okay? I usually like to go kind of desaturated. This blue, this stormy blue looks really cool. I'm going to duplicate this, and now I'm going to choose a complementary color. Doesn't have to be complementary. It can be some other color that just looks good with blue, okay? Yeah, you can use GIMP. That's totally fine. Feel free to use GIMP. All right, cool. So several of you are following along. That's awesome. Okay. And for those of you who aren't following along, this is totally fine. Seriously, what you're about to learn, I'm not trying to oversell anything here, I promise. What you're about to learn is going to probably blow your mind a little bit because it's just a few mechanical, simple steps that all of a sudden turn clicking into a masterpiece. All right, so let's go to a complementary color here. Let's just pick something that I think looks pretty. This is going to be the color of the grass. Let's see here. I kind of like this sort of sea foam green color. It's kind of cool. Maybe a little bit more saturated. Okay, we're almost there. We're almost there. These two colors are really important, guys. If you don't get these two colors down, if they don't look pretty, then, well, you probably shouldn't keep moving forward. I kind of like this. Let's see here. That blue, I'm going to change this green to be something a little bit not so bluish. Maybe a, ooh, I like that. That one's probably what I want to do. A little bit more yellow. It's kind of cool. Although that brown looks good too. I kind of like that. Okay. Now, the third color we're going to pick here. I'm going to make it smaller because, well, the size of these swatches indicates the importance of the color and the amount of times we're going to use it, okay? The next color I want to create is a vibrant pop of color that we're going to use for flowers or maybe lampposts, something like that, okay? So let's just see here. What colors would really pop? That kind of looks good. Actually, probably an orangish color. Let's see here. It's kind of cool. Let's see if we can do some adjustments here until it feels right. That kind of looks cool in a weird way. So I'm going to go with that color. Alrighty. Next thing we're going to do here is we're going to choose the color of the grass that the player is actually going to walk on. This is just the color of the grass in general, but I want to do something a little bit darker. Okay. So this one right here is the color of the grass that the player is going to walk on. This color is going to be the color of the background as it comes forward. This will make sense in just a bit. The next thing I want to do, just go a little bit darker. This is going to be for the foreground elements. And then one more color is black. Okay? This is going to be the foreground color. Okay? The very close to the camera will probably make it blurry. I'm going to take these two colors. Guys, I know it sounds weird that we're spending so much time on the color, but the thing is well, once you get the color down, you're pretty much good to go. And I'll show you why. Color is the most important thing. Once you get the color down, you really can make something look breathtaking. And we're just going to use circles. We're just going to use circles for this, okay? And I do teach all of this in my program and how to like take it to the next level, but this is just sort of the beginner section of what I do teach, okay? All right, so I'm going to put a gradient over these two here, okay? Why am I doing that? So that I can pick colors, let's do a little bit more, between those two colors. So it gives me sort of the ability to mix those two colors together. And this is really important, okay? So those are the only colors we're going to use. I'm actually changing my mind on this pink color here. I kind of want to just do, yep, there we go. There we go, okay? I'm going to merge all these swatches together. I'm going to lock this layer so that we can pick from those colors. It's literally like having a palette of colors that we can paint from, okay? The next step, once you choose your colors, 2 complementary colors, a pop of color, and then foreground colors. Once you choose those colors, because really, honestly, all we're working with is 3 different hex values here. That's about it. The next thing I want to do is pick that blue, and this is going to be our sky, okay? All right, the next thing I want to do is, this is where things get really, really fun. I'm going to choose the pencil tool here, okay? This is just for the purposes of this tutorial to show you guys, okay, really you don't need to know how to sketch. All you need to know how to do is click, okay? So I'm going to pick a color with my color picker here that's a little bit closer to that green. And this is going to be our background trees. Let's do a little bit smaller here. So in my head, this is sort of just like some bushy trees in the background, okay? And I'm just clicking. Again, we're just using a mouse here. That's all we're using. So just keep on clicking, and we're just creating some sort of contours and shapes here. And what's so funny is I think a lot of you are probably thinking, and I wouldn't blame you if you were thinking this, is like, oh, this looks like crap. But what's going to make it look pretty is the gradient, and that is the shifting colors as we come closer and closer to the camera, all right? A game that does this really well is actually The King's Bird, which is a game from my publisher for Neversong. Let's go a little bit smaller. And their name is Serenity Forge. Okay, so we're just coming towards the camera, right? Why is this, well, why is this true? Why does this work? Well, it works because what we're simulating is these trees, these dark green trees, or these, I guess, puke green trees. we're simulating them going into the fog, okay? And everything has fog. Even if it's a very clear day, it's eventually going to blend into the atmosphere. And that just means that we're slowly becoming blue, right? All right, there's our next layer here. I'm going to go a little bit higher here. You definitely don't want your trees to be touching that much. And this would all be a loopable background in Unity. Once we brought this into Unity, we would make sure that the trees can loop, okay? Choose a new color here. Go a little bit bigger. Yeah, color can make or break your art, says Marsy Boy. Absolutely, that's very true. Okay, guys, we're almost there. We're almost towards where the player is going to be walking, okay? Alrighty. So that looks pretty cool. This is a little weird here. You want to make sure the shape is not colliding too much. I wonder if I can do something like that. That looks a little bit better, okay? And then one more layer, which is this one here. And this is going to be just before we get to the player actually standing on the ground, okay? And what's so cool about what we're doing here is this does not require anything other than you kind of having a simple two understandings. The first understanding is understanding that things bleed into the background as they come towards the camera or go away from the camera. That's the first one. The second thing you need to understand is that, well, just the shape of the world, right? And how it's important to have certain shapes contrasting other shapes behind them. This looks bad, doesn't it? Look at that. What? It's like, oh no, I just lost all the context of the trees behind it. So you definitely want to make sure that you're thinking about the shape of the actual landscape here, okay? All right, let's keep going. We're gonna go forward a little bit more. All righty. Let's see here. And for those of you who are just joining us, a ton of this content that I'm covering here, or there's a ton more content that I cover in my brand new program. This live stream today is just to celebrate the brand new program that just launched. And honestly, it's blown me away. We have over 100, almost 200 students have already signed up to the program, which is incredible. So we're kind of celebrating that today, and I just wanted to show you guys some tricks. So if you're interested in joining that program and getting 50% off for the next 5 days and learning everything I know about 2D art, feel free to click below to check out the program. Okay, so I just drew the ground. I just dragged circles, and there we go. I actually even like that texture that's created there. Super cool. I like that a lot. Notice how there's a distinct difference in color between just behind the player and the ground that the player can actually walk on. That's super important, okay? You want the player to be able to know exactly what they can walk on. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is just click. And this is going to be the foreground bushes, okay? This is a very bushy world. And I'm going to show you guys the brushes that that can really make this thing pop. But for now, we're just going to use circles, okay? I'm trying to give you an idea of the importance of stamping shapes. Because for most of you who don't know how to sketch, including myself, I don't really sketch. Stamping is kind of what I do. I just stamp shapes. Okay. All right, one more. Let's do some up here, actually. Kind of like having some trees in the foreground, right? And then one more. It's going to be that black, right? There is our foreground. We could probably put some here too. And some here too. All right, so what do you guys think so far? Pretty cool, huh? We've definitely got, a beautiful scene here. Very interesting colors. It kind of looks like just about to turn autumn, right? Pretty cool. Okay, now, here's something that you can do that really, it changes everything, honestly. I'm actually going to go into the brushes here. I have a set of brushes, and by the way, these are included free in the program. Don't worry, you don't need these if you don't need these if you want to do 2D art. I just find them very helpful. So I created these to, I guess, create the kind of style you might see in my games, Neversong. So what I'm going to do is start with this bushes brush is pretty cool, actually. So I'm going to go to this color here, and I'm just going to actually start adding more detail. Look at that. More detail to the background. This is so much fun. So basically what it does is it just, you're following along those circles. And by the way, you can just start doing this. You don't have to do circles first. But this just adds so much detail to the background. Look at that. Let's make our way forward. Isn't this so cool? I love this. It encourages me, honestly, because there's so many of you probably watching right now who thought, I can't do 2D art. I'm not talented enough. Well, I mean, does this really require talent? All it really requires is you to understand how color works. The first step is color, complementary color, choosing complementary colors, and then a pop of orange. That was our first step. The second step is understanding how those colors move towards the camera, right? And then the third step is understanding how to shape things. But once you have a brush like this, and you have the shape and the colors down and the depth down, all of a sudden you're turning it into a masterpiece. It's just really cool to watch this happen right before your eyes. Look at that. That's so cool. Okay, let's keep going forward with this one here. Whoops. And some of you might be thinking, Thomas, it's a little blurry. It's not blending very well between each layer. They kind of look like they're blending between each layer. Like that color and that color are very similar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make them really separate more visually. Okay. Okay. These should probably be a little bit bigger, honestly. There we go. And we're also going to use textures as well to create a lot more detail. Okay, this grass here, this is one of my favorite things to do. I'm going to take the grass brush, and this is a grass brush that I've created exactly for times like these where I don't have a lot of time and I just want to create some grass. So let's go a little bit smaller, and we're going to create just a little bit of shaping here. Look at that. That is so cool. And you don't want it to look too loopy, right? Or too patterned. So what I do is I create little tufts of grass. Look at that. There we go. Honestly, we could probably create, let's see here, one sec. We could probably create another layer up front here that is this, a little bit bigger. Whoops. There we go. Oh, looks like I did the wrong layer. That's okay. Let's see here. Yep, I did. Crap. I think that's okay, actually. Let's see here. Can I copy it and delete it? Yeah. Okay, we're good. And then I'm going to put it on top of that. There we go. Okay. Alrighty. So next thing I want to do is take this color here, and we're going to create just a little bit more shaping. Maybe a hill coming down this way. Don't worry. I will be blending this a little bit more. We don't want it to be that dark. Let's take the pencil tool really quick, just like this, and just fill it in here. Look. Alrighty. Okay, and then we're going to do a color overlay. I know this is a little bit more complicated than what I was talking about earlier, but all I'm doing is just adding an additional swatch here and blending it between the layer in front of it and the layer behind it. So that just means we're putting a color overlay of about 50% of what this color is here. Okay? I'm going to rasterize that. That just means apply the layer style. And then we're going to go forward here. Let's go to our bush. Our bush tool here. Take the colors, and we're going to go pretty big. And we'll add a little bit more detail here as well, by the way. I'll show you what we're going to do. As things come towards the camera, I like to start adding more and more detail. What that does is if you're not going to have blur in your layers, like blur in the background or blur in the foreground to create a bokeh effect, instead of adding blur, you can actually just add more detail to the foreground, less detail to the background, and that's going to feel kind of like blur in a weird, kind of a weird way. I'm going to take this black here, and we're just going to finish up. And what's so cool, guys, is we're not even halfway there. And what's fun is what's left is so much easier than what we've just done. And it's going to make things blow up. It's going to make this thing look alive, look really moody. And it's just, honestly, it's just science. It's like once you figure out how it works, who cares if you're talented? You know how it works. It's like, do you need to be talented to be able to follow instructions? No. So just do things this way and it'll probably look pretty. Okay. I should probably save this, shouldn't I? Let's go to my desktop and save it to the desktop. It's going to be called, what do we want to call this, guys? How about Mustard Haven? That's kind of cool. All right, Mustard Haven. I like that. Okay. I want to add a little bit of detail to the foreground. So I actually have a brush here. And again, these brushes are included in 2D Art Pro if you're interested in taking a look at that course. I know I'm promoting it pretty heavily during the stream, guys. It did just launch today, and I'm really excited. I kind of planned that I would promote it today, so just bear with me if you're not interested. It supports the channel. But look, I have this cool brush here, and it's even okay for them to sort of hang out like that, see? Sort of hang out without a branch. It kind of makes it look stylized. All right. So we can use some of those. So that looks kind of cool. I kind of wish that it wasn't, I don't know if stylistically I want to go that detailed. Let me see here. It's a cool brush. I like it because I made it, right? I kind of like it like this. I think it's fine. Okay. Are there any other brushes I want to do here? Oh, we have a flower brush. Why don't we add some flowers that are the color of this orange? Okay. Kind of want them here. Pretty cool. Awesome. Maybe put some behind, right? Just like this. Those will go about right here. Yep, there we go. Cool. All right, so that pop of orange suddenly changes the whole vibe. It kind of, it doesn't make it feel so too stylized, but it's still pretty stylized, but I think it helps a lot. Let's turn that one just a little bit. There we go. Okay. Are there any other brushes I want to use really quick here? We could probably add a few pine trees. Let's consider this. Let's see if we can add some pine trees here. And those would go right about here, I think. Yeah. Just a few pine trees right here. Sort of mixing in with the background. Nothing too crazy here. All right, now I'm going to start using patterns, okay? I've got several patterns here I want to use. You probably can't see them because of my ugly face. Let's see here. Let's put those right there. That face. And let's start adding a pattern, okay? The first pattern I want to use is a pattern. Again, this is included in the course, but you don't need these. And honestly, you can create some of them yourself. But there's these hills here. I just love these hills. So I'm going to go to multiply, or I'm going to set them to multiply, and I'm going to pull it up. Look at this. And then just drop it down. So now we have these Blue Ridge Mountains in the background. I love that pattern. And you know what's funny about patterns is I never really used them when I was working on my games because I was too lazy to create them initially. But now I'm like, oh, it makes things so much easier. There's another pattern I really like, which is, and by the way, you can download other patterns. You don't have to use my patterns. There's plenty of patterns out there. So this one is a tree pattern. Look at this. This is so great. So, and I'm not saying that because my patterns are awesome. I'm saying the way that patterns just change everything and they speed things up so quickly. So this pattern here is set to multiply, and that means there's not going to be any white in there. And I'm going to set the scale to be pretty small. There we go. And it's just about, there we go. Just moving it around so that you can see some of that detail. Look at that. So we're just adding very subtle detail. And I'm going to duplicate that pattern on top of every single layer. Look at that. We're just adding detail slowly. Man, it just changes everything. This one as well. Look at this. Look at that. That was so fast. And I'm kind of excited, not because I'm trying to sell you guys anything. I'm genuinely excited because I just figured this out. Like, I haven't been using patterns like this in the last 10 years. I would kind of just stamp patterns. I would copy and paste them. But now I'm just using them as an effect, which just makes me so excited. That looks pretty cool. Yeah, and let's add some to the foreground here. I'm going to increase the opacity on this one here. Sweet. Oh my word. That is so much fun. Okay, now that we've got these patterns, let's consider adding some fog. So before things get really messy, I'm just going to merge down all of these layers onto all of these pattern layers down onto the actual layer itself. Merge down one more. Okay, good. We don't need the swatches anymore. We can disable those. Okay, so what I want to do here is add some fog. Well, I actually don't want to add any fog. I think I'm going to do shadows instead of fog. So I'm going to add a shadow to this layer, and all this is you take a gradient tool. Okay, now that we're done stamping, we're going to start just using the gradient tool. The gradient tool is probably my #2 most used tool. So we're just going to start adding shadows. Look at this. One more here. And this just adds a little bit more moodiness to your illustration. And I'm just going to duplicate these and put them in between. Look at that. In between each layer. It's so much fun. It makes me so excited because in my head, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's kind of like driving stick. It just sort of, it's second nature because I've been practicing this for so long. I kind of don't like the shadow on that one. Maybe just a subtle shadow is fine. It makes me think I need to add some highlights. So we'll talk about highlights in a second here. Okay, move that to here. Oops, looks like we got a problem, Houston. We're gonna merge these two layers together. And then let's duplicate that and put it over top. What is going on? Hold on. What are these? There we go. Merge those layers together. And just a little bit of a shadow here. And that means I should probably make this one darker entirely. Yep. Just like that. And then this one, let's see here. Nope, right here. There we go. It's a little too dark, actually. Let's see if we can. Okay. All right. You know, I feel like that ruined it. Hold on. Let me see here. No, it's fine. It's fine. I think this just needs to be darker entirely. So we're going to drop it down. There we go. All right, guys. So now that we've got those shadows, what we can do is we can start adding in inner shadows to every single layer. Those inner shadows are not necessarily shadows. They're going to be highlights on one side and then shadows on another side. So let me try and explain. Before we do that, I'm going to merge all these layers together. Merge down, merge down, merge down, merge down, merge down, merge down, merge down. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to start with this layer here. Actually, let's start with this one. I kind of like to start kind of in the middle somewhere. I don't know why. But I'm going to set an inner shadow to set to overlay. Overlay, what it does is if it's black, it actually just enhances the color behind it. Enhances the saturation. So it makes it kind of look burnt almost. It's really stylized. So I set the distance to be about like this. Set the size. Drop down the, let's see here. There we go. And this is assuming, we're just pretending where the light's coming from. I'm just pretending the light's coming from the top left-hand corner, okay? All right. And this is so cool because what we're going to do is add one more inner shadow. It's going to be dark, but it's going to have no blur. And we're going to set the distance like that. And then the opacity really, really low, okay? So that's going to add that crisp edge. It almost looks like a stroke. Then we're going to do another inner shadow. Make sure use global light is not checked. And we're going to add a little bit of light on the left side here because the light is coming from that way. And then also a blurry white on the left side. Okay? Look at that. Isn't that cool? Looks like we lost our dark one. Why is that? Let's see here. There we go. There we go. Okay? There's one more thing that we can do here. Might as well just get it out of the way, right? We're going to do a gradient overlay. Now look at this. It's already set up for me because I was using it earlier in my Bioshock game. And if you haven't seen that video, I just posted it. I remade Bioshock. All this is a gradient with various levels of alpha, high alpha and low alpha. And what this does is this creates some kind of sun shaft. Now be sure it's coming in the direction of the sun. So I'm going to put it this way. There we go, just like that. And it needs to be very subtle. All it needs to do is sort of trick the brain to think there's depth there and that there's texture there. Anything else that I can do here? Well, let's see if we've got any patterns we can use here. I like this pattern here. This is a grass pattern, and it's just, well, just dark shadows being cast. So I wonder if we can set the angle. Maybe we can just use that on the grass. Is there any other patterns here I could use? No, I'm good. I think we're good. So there is, well, let's think here. It doesn't look 3D enough. Hold on. Let's increase the opacity for this one. Good. And the opacity for the, nope, not that one. The other one. Good. Okay, it looks a little bit more 3D now, doesn't it? So I'm going to copy these layer styles. And this is so cool. Watch this. I'm going to paste this on every single one of these layers. So I can just highlight all the layers and hit paste layer style. Okay. So now what we're going to do is go into each one and make sure it's working properly. Some of the color here isn't really working for me, so I'm going to clean it up a little bit. All right, this inner shadow here is fine, but the highlight is way too bright, and I would argue that it should be more of this blue color anyway. So let's see if we can fix that. Okay, what about this one? Could probably just drop this down. Remember, as things are further and further in the background, you want less and less detail. Okay, so I'm just going to keep dropping those down. Good. Okay. Probably don't need this one to be as bright as it is. There we go. Okay, let's keep going. This layer here, not as intense, but just a little bit more is fine. Drop it down, drop it down, drop it down just a little bit. This one here is a little bit too intense as well. And those pine trees, we'll fix those in a bit too. Drop it down, drop it down. I think the gradient overlay, there's a problem with the gradient overlay. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't think I need a gradient overlay for the pine trees. Certainly not the pine trees. So let's go to the pine trees and turn off the gradient overlay. Turn off the inner shadow as well. This inner shadow, drop it down. So I'm just creating very, very subtle shading here. Nothing crazy, all right? There we go. Okay, this one we could probably just turn them all off. Yeah, okay, let's save that out. And now let's consider adding a little bit of detail to the grass. Because the grass is flat, those angled inner shadows are gonna look really weird. So what I'm gonna do, and I can show you even if you want, if I copy the layer style and paste it, I mean, it's kind of cool, but you can notice the grass blades look a little strange. See that? So I'm actually gonna stay away from doing that. And instead I'm gonna just add a highlight. I'm gonna shadow. Here's why we're adding a shadow. This is what I did for Neversong. The shadow is simulating these bushes. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is take the lasso tool. Now you could use anything. You could even stamp if you wanted to, but I'm gonna use the lasso tool. And I'm just gonna add shading here. And I'm just using a mouse. And this is to simulate these bushes, casting a shadow onto the grass, okay? And then I'm gonna do a motion blur, angled. Okay, just like this. And then set it to blur. So we did a motion blur, and now we're doing just a regular blur. Okay. Save it. And then on this one, why not just throw in a shadow as well? Let's see here. I think this one will do. Well, hold on. Let's see here. I actually don't think I want to do anything with those. So I think we're good with those. The last thing I want to do here to finish off this piece is I want to use one of my patterns here. And the pattern I'm going to use is fog. This is a really cool pattern. It loops perfectly, or tiles perfectly. And so we can just set it to overlay, drop it down like that. And let's just throw in a couple of these in front of everything. It's just going to add a little bit of subtle moodiness, a subtle texture. We'll increase the scale just so there's a difference between each one. And one more in front of this here. That looks good. I wonder if we could do it in front of the black here. We're going to set it to normal so that it actually shows up on top of the black. But because we're setting it to normal, it looks a little bit too white. So we're going to add a little bit of yellow and then drop down. Sorry, guys. Drop down the opacity significantly here. Okay. And one final thing I like to do, and this might seem counterintuitive, but what I like to do is do one final color adjustment to the entire image. I know certainly I want the blue to be a little bit more saturated, but I also think it's a little too yellow. So what I'm going to do is go to my yellows, and this is just a hue saturation shift, and I could change the yellows to be a different color. I think that more reddish color looks really cool, honestly. And then I can go to my blues and just crank up the saturation. You'll notice it's not doing anything. That's probably because we want to do cyans. There we go, okay? So increase the cyan, drop it down, maybe a little bit more green and a little bit darker, okay? And then finally, sign the picture. There you go. Pretty straightforward, right? So again, just for those of you who are just joining us, this is just a tiny little bit of what you learn in 2D Art Pro. And I'm going to get to a Q&A really quick about anything 2D art. Any questions you have, I want to answer. But I did want to remind you guys, it's 50% off right now. This supports the channel, supports my studio, helps me keep making games. But also, hopefully, it's an investment in your future. And honestly, taking your indie games and making them really pop. What we just did was really simple. Imagine if you figured that out and you really mastered it. What kind of difference would it make to your indie game? What kind of difference would it make financially to your indie game once you launch it? Because personally, if I saw a screenshot like this, I would probably buy the game. And that's just my humble opinion. So if you're interested in getting the course, guys, click below. You're going to learn, honestly, a lot of stuff. You're going to learn Photoshop basics, cartoony landscapes, interiors, serious landscapes, multiple player styles, multiple enemy styles, 7 art downloads, 10 Photoshop brushes, and then also 10 Photoshop textures, the ones we used in this video. Okay, let's ask questions. If you guys have any questions about 2D art, ask away. It doesn't have to be related to anything. If you have questions about 2D art, I would happily answer those questions. So let's jump in really, really quick, and I'll try and answer those questions. So ask away, and I'm available for whatever you need. Go ahead and ask away. Animation Art says, I want to say thanks. I saw your videos and I got so motivated to make my games. That's awesome. That's awesome. What inspired my style? There's an illustrator. His name is Adam. Well, Adam Firth, for one. He did Salad Fingers back in the Newgrounds day. And he was one of my favorite illustrators. I don't really have his style, but the mood. He accomplishes a really foggy mood, and that's something that I really latched onto. Adam Phillips as well. Does anybody remember Brackies? Not Brackies. Brackenwood, not Brackies. We all remember Brackies. It's a distant memory. No, Brackenwood. And that was Bitey Castle. That art style was really influential. And then also Esau Andrews. ESAO Andrews. And he did a lot of illustrations for Disney. He's really into teals and yellow grass. And he pretty much always follows that blending into the background style. Okay. How do you make sure your drawings are, this is from Crystal, how do you make sure your drawings are always to scale? Scale is one of my biggest issues, especially when designing in different aspect ratios. Well, I wouldn't design in different aspect ratios for one. I would do 3840 by 2160. I would make that look beautiful first. I wouldn't worry about all this different sizes. I wouldn't worry about the size of the scrolling landscape in your game. All I would worry about is get it fit and make it look beautiful on a 3840 by 2160 canvas. What I tend to do, and I've pretty much figured this out where I don't need to do it anymore, but what I used to do is I would put a little character model in there and then design around that character model. And also a few detailed objects, maybe a windmill or I don't know, maybe a bike, just so your brain goes, okay, that's the relative size. Everything else needs to be relative to that scale. That's what I would do. And by the way, you're not the only one. I have a lot of trouble with scale. I'm sorry, I used to have a lot of trouble with scale. And this is my third point. This is a great question. My third point is you really want to start abstract and then add detail later. What I used to do is I'd go, okay, I know I want this level to have trees. So I would go really detailed on the trees. And then I go, I want this level to have a castle. And then I go really, really detailed on the castle. And then I would look and I'm like, wait, the trees are way bigger than the castle. And it's because I was so focused on the detail, I wasn't worried about the important abstract aspects of the 2D art. And those include color, but they also include scale. So start abstract. Once you zoom out, I recommend zooming out as far as you can. Look at your illustration, tiny illustration, and go, does this look like a photograph? If it looks like a photograph from far away, you're on the right track. Great question. Blastpunk says there are color palette tools online. Just Google them. That's right. One of my favorite ones is cooler.co. I think that's what it's called. Cooler. Cooler. Is that what it's called? I think that's what it is. Spider Loop says, do we have to draw scenes from scratch or can we reuse the drawings from previous scenes? Yeah, you should always be. That's called, and we talk about this in the program, that's called modularity. At least that's what I call it. You should never be reusing, you should never be drawing like 30 tree types. And this is true for AAA games, okay? So, have you ever played Breath of the Wild, right? If you look at all the trees in Breath of the Wild, you'll realize 80% of these are identical, right? The same is true with a 2D game. Now, here's the thing. In Photoshop, you duplicate out all those trees, right? Let's say you have like 5 different trees. Just duplicate them as smart objects. If you want to change them, double-click the smart object and edit, like, let's say it has apples on it. Edit the apples. When you go back to the original scene, they're all going to be changed. But here's the thing. When you import it into Unity, you don't need to have 5 different sprites that are identical. Just take one and then discard the other ones, okay? But like I was saying earlier, I highly recommend that you get your illustration looking gorgeous in Photoshop. Once it looks amazing and you could print it out and hang it up and sign your name, then deconstruct. Delete all of the duplicates and just have assets in a little bundle in the middle of your page, right? Trim the edges off and then import it as a PSB, that's a Photoshop big file, in Unity. And then reuse those assets and recreate it as duplicated prefabs. Does that make sense? Tuckback says, how much would you charge to write a song for my game? $6 million. And the reason why is because I wouldn't do it at all. Because I am very, very busy. I wish that I could. Got to get back on Father. I just finished up creating this course, so it's been busy. Tuckback, I hate to say it, but I'm just too busy for your song. I know that sounds lame. Okay, Frame Game says if you had to choose 5, let's turn it to 3. 5 is a little bit much. If you had to choose 3 tips and that to make good 2D art for your games, what would it be? Well, we covered it in this video, but I'm gonna review it. Choose 2 complementary colors and a pop of color. That's your first one. Okay. Now there's different types of correlations between color. There's triad, there's complementary, there's quadratic. There's different ways, and all you do is you look at the color wheel, Google it, color theory types. Just Google that and pick one. I like to choose complementary colors. So a good example is I went to Clemson University. The color scheme of that program is orange and purple. Those are complementary colors. Orange, purple, and then choose one that's at the top of the circle. So it's probably going to be a blue, a bluish, teal, greenish color maybe. I'm not quite sure. So I choose 3 colors. Pop a color, complementary color, okay? And then find the gradient with those 2 complementary colors, put that gradient in, and then pick from that gradient as you come towards the camera. That's the second tip. As you're coming towards the camera, you go slowly away from the background color. And that's creating that atmosphere, all right? The third tip is start abstract and go more detailed later. Do you guys notice that when we were working on this illustration, it looked pretty good as just an abstract picture? And all we were doing was we were following color principles and also depth and atmospheric principles. That was about it. The detail is just the cherry on top. If you don't get the color down, if you don't get the scaling down, you're screwed. Honestly. No amount of I almost said demon. No amount of detail is going to fix your painting. That's like putting lipstick on a pig. It's just not going to happen, okay? So detail is not the solution. It's never the solution, okay? Well, Thomas, Hollow Knight is really detailed. Yeah, but it works in the abstract first. Honestly, I could guarantee you, but maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like they did the same principles. Start in the abstract, make sure everything looks good from a color perspective, from a shape perspective, and an atmospheric perspective. Again, layers are slowly going into the atmosphere, into the background. There's a gradient blending, and then throw on your details, your line art, your highlights, your shadows, that kind of thing. Spider Loop says, do I have to adhere to color math? Can't we just use what looks good? Well, I hate to break it to you, but what looks good follows good color math. That's typically true. Now, there's some artists who are really good at making a lot of crappy colors look good together. But if you're a layman like me, if you've got a limited budget on your game and you'd want to just convert let's say you have great game mechanics, but your game doesn't look good. If you're just like, Thomas, I need a solution now, what I would say is follow color math, okay? Complementary colors, triadic colors, quadratic colors, low saturation in the background, high saturation in the foreground, and blend that, create that contrast. All right. Mohammed, Thomas, I love your content. Keep it up. And I have a question. How do you make the character to walk on the foreground in Unity? That's a whole other discussion. I have a video called How to Make a 2D Game. I think that's what it's called. And if you're interested in learning how to do that, check that out. I also have a free 2D game kit below, and it's already set up for you. You just download that and use that. It's totally free. No gimmicks. If you want to make it look beautiful, then you can just check out my online program, 2D Art Pro, which, again, we just launched today. And it'll teach you how to make a beautiful game using that 2D game kit. Mohammed, hey! Before everything I do, the art of my game, when I export it as a PNG, I try to give it a collider in Unity, but it doesn't work. There's always a bug. Well, first off, don't export things as a PNG. Don't do that. Just save your PSD file as a PSB. Import the 2D art tools in the package manager in Unity, and it'll just import all of your layers as PNG automatically. That means you can go back to your PSB file, your Photoshop file, click save, and it'll update whenever you make a change. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the Polygon Collider is going to do a lot of really strange things. Let's say you have grass like this. If you put a Polygon Collider on that grass, the player's going to get stuck on the grass, right? So just use a box collider, and it'll also speed up your game in terms of performance. All right. Blastpunk says 2D art importer is God's gift. That's absolutely right. I totally agree. All right. The only real difference, this is from Rhombus Head, the only real difference is that you're working with textures instead of sprites. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you were answering somebody else's question. What camera zoom size settings do you usually do to keep those 4K backgrounds focused? Well, it's kind of complicated. So I actually use orthographic. I don't use perspective. I use an orthographic camera. It really doesn't matter what the size of the camera viewport is. You could scale down your art if you want. It doesn't matter. It's all relative, right? But I'll just fit it within the frame. And then really it's about the PSB import settings as opposed to anything else in the actual game scene. The import settings, I usually like to set them to as maximum size as possible, which is like 8,000 pixels. But then I use crunch compression. Crunch compression, and I slide it up all the way. Crunch compression is another of God's gifts. If you use this, you can have these massive crisp files, but the crunch compression, somehow it lowers the file size to like less than a megabyte. It's pretty amazing. If you see that your artwork just isn't crisp enough, it's probably because mipmaps are on, so turn off mipmaps. And then you also might want to set the, what is it called? The filter mode to point no filter. It'll have a little crisp pixelation to it, but in my opinion, it kind of looks good. And then obviously on top of all of that, I'll throw a profile on. We do talk about this in the program. I'll throw a profile on with some image effects and some bloom, some gray, film grain, some color correction, and then I'll do some particles. And it'll just make things look really atmospheric, really have a lot of depth. Oddly enough, this is a problem that a lot of you are going to have. You're going to have something that's beautiful in Photoshop, and you're going to like pat yourself on the back, and you're going to say, wow, I did not know I could do this. You're going to bring it into Photoshop, into Unity, and you're going to be like, this looks horrible. That's because the import settings need to be perfect. The camera needs to be perfect. The particles need to be perfect. And you just got to make sure that everything is lined up properly. All the settings are set up properly, because things just look different in Unity. It's kind of it's almost like witchcraft. It's like, I don't know what happened here, but it doesn't look great. So you got to tweak with things. And usually it's in the texture settings. That's usually where the problem lies. Okay? Guys, this was really, really fun. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And I appreciate those of you who stayed and listened to me read these ads for my new program. I'm really excited about the program. I've been working on it for 2 months. A lot of people helped and pitched in to make this program. It's only 5 days where it's 50% off. After that, it's not going to be discounted like this for a long time. So if you guys want to join the program, over 200 people, almost 200 people have already joined the program in the last 4 hours. So if you want to join and learn a ton about 2D art, feel free to take a look. And I'll see you guys later. Oh yeah, the link's below if you're interested. Thanks again for supporting the channel, guys. It really means a lot when you guys, take a look at my games, or you take a look at my programs or my tools, or just watch my videos. It really does mean a lot. I was just thinking about it today, how it's a dream come true what I'm doing right now. Like, I wouldn't be doing anything different. And I hope that you guys learn a lot from me. Sometimes I feel like you guys help me more than I help you. And so I just wanted to say a huge thank you. It really, really means a lot. Yeah, have a good weekend. I'll see you.